You're listening to Forging Fluidity with Savannah Wishart and Griffin Coombs, where we humbly navigate the idea of primal purpose, exploring conversations around physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being on the quest for a truly conscious and meaningful human experience. We're excited to bring you all a very special episode, the first episode that we recorded together in the same room. Many of you have been surprised to learn that until recently, Savannah and I had never actually met in person, so we're talking about what it was like having a lovely first-time visit here in Tangier. We also use this trip as a reference point to ground ourselves when it comes to so-called once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. You'll also hear us touching on the differences between cookie-cutter coaching methods and uniquely integrative approaches that take into account the coach's personal interests and experiences. All that and a little more, so please share, like, subscribe, and most importantly, enjoy the conversation. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to episode 8 of Forging Fluidity on Navigating Primal Purpose with myself, Savannah Wishart, and Griffin Coombs. We are both coming live to you from Tangier, Morocco.
Sitting side by side in person for the first time.
In our entire lives, starting since Wednesday.
Right. So, I don't know, less than a week prior to this episode, we met in person for the first time. And so we thought we would be remiss if we did not actually record an episode in real time, sitting next to each other in the same room. And we're even using the same microphone. So it's an exciting premise for this episode. So welcome back and thanks for tuning in. We thought we'd talk a little bit about our experience, and it's been, nothing super exciting, except it's been lovely to spend time together.
So lovely. So some background, because I don't think very many people know that we never met before. I think we began talking sometime around December 2017. And I've been mostly in Sweden since then. Griffin's been pretty much fully in Morocco. And with being in Portugal the last few months, I thought we both thought we're closer than ever. So if we could make a point to meet, that would be great. So we beat the 5-year mark.
Yeah, that's right. It has not yet been 5 years. Yeah, between, 4.5, almost 5. And yeah, we've been sort of taking it pretty slowly. The other thing you might hear in our voices that we've both been suffering from a little bit of sinus trouble. I guess it's that time of year, especially, who knows where you caught it, either over in Portugal or once you got here. Maybe you got it from me. I don't know, but
who knows? There's
a lot of stuff blowing around in this windy city of Tangier, so excuse the sounds of our kind of congested voices, but that was not going to stop us from sitting down and having a conversation for you all. So, yeah.
Or from doing anything else.
Yeah, true. We have been trying to take the universe's cue to slow down a little bit, but we're trying, this kind of the whole premise of this whole podcast is trying to find a balance between just a balance in general, right? And I think in this case, it is sort of the sluggishness that comes with being a little bit sick and the universe saying take it easy, but also wanting to milk our time together and to be able to enjoy Tangier through Savannah's eyes. So, but I think we've been doing a pretty good job. I think it's been a nice mix of downtime and exploring.
Yep, really good. For me, it's been a little bit of the tug and pull between what can I do to make the most of this experience, but also listening to my body and my energy levels, because, for example, I've chosen not to go to the gym for a couple days, even though that would be a great experience to have with Griffin, because if you follow his movement practice, you know how much he knows about that. So it would be such a treat, but I'm also trying not to see this as a once-in-a-lifetime experience, which I think so many people, especially when it comes to travel, we can feel like, this is the only time in my life I have to do all the things And then it really detracts from the experience of a vacation or a holiday, because you aren't actually going to relax. It's almost more stressful than being at home, because you're just trying to fill all the time with all the things. And for me, I've been to Morocco before, I think about 6 years ago. And so I know that it's totally possible to just get on a plane and go back somewhere. And that's another thing, is when I get kind of in these periods of stagnancy and stuckness of being somewhere too long, it feels so intimidating or such a big deal to get on a plane. And then I get to the airport and it's like, oh, it's so easy. Like, the world is so accessible right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think when you're on a vacation, I mean, it depends on the point, and I think that we're trying to spend some time together. Like, we've been friends for almost 5 years, and we've had some conversations, some of them broadcast on this podcast and some of them not, but some of, the types of conversations that you have with close friends. And so the fact that we hadn't met, I think a big part of this trip is just hanging out, just kind of being in each other's presence and enjoying what our friendship is in person. And you don't get to do that a lot. Sometimes you do, but sometimes if you're doing too much stuff, it's more about the stuff and less about just kind
just
of
being.
just being and being in the presence of your friend. And that goes for anybody, even people you have met in person before. So I think, we've been seeing some stuff. We've been trying some delicious food, but also we've been spending a lot of downtime. I have gotten to take advantage of Savannah's amazing prowess behind the camera. As you all know, she is a professional photographer of many sorts, and just a marketing branding coach as well. So she's helping me a lot with my online presence right now. So I am forever grateful with that. We've been doing some movement stuff. I've been kind of helping her nurse what would you call it, a hip restriction?
Yep, a hip restriction, kind of sort of injury type of thing. But even like a chronic mobility issue with how well I can squat. So we've both really been able to take advantage of each other's expertise in person.
Yeah.
And I think, of course it will continue afterwards, and Griffin is going to have an amazing website soon, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We'll let you all know about it when it launches. And so, yeah, that's just been the gist of our slow-moving Tangier hangout experience as Savannah leaves Portugal and heads on to her next adventure. So we were also thinking about this podcast, and we were thinking about branding and making this podcast or this partnership and what this podcast stands for into more than just a podcast. Just brainstorming stages in its infancy. But so, don't expect any t-shirts.
Unless you know how to manufacture t-shirts on a large scale, then please reach out to us.
Yeah. But other than that, don't expect your Forging Fluidity shirt anytime soon. But it led us to a lot of conversations just about success and authenticity. And I was starting to notice a pattern, as a fitness and movement coach. I have drawn from a lot of different systems, even systems that I may not be certified in, but have spent a lot of time practicing and understanding how the principles manifest in my body. And I was noticing a pattern in all of kind of the top systems that I most respect and most draw from regularly are designed by people who started solving a problem for themselves. So it was the founder of each of these systems was very much, disenchanted with the mainstream approach to a lot of different things, or, whether it's back pain or just general lack of athleticism or being really sick. And, doctors or traditional trainers or whatever, not having the answers for them. And so them venturing out and saying there has to be a better way, or this or that doesn't make sense, and then experimenting and solving the problem in their own body and forging that system that way. And so I had noticed that is what I'm trying to do, because I don't know if we talked about my background in one of those other podcasts, but I was not athletic growing up. I was kind of lazy. I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't that wasn't a part of my life. Being active wasn't a part of my life. And then when I did start becoming active, my body was just really misaligned. I didn't know at the time, but I was just suffering from back pain as early as age like 23 or something. So what's led me from somebody just kind of doing P90X at home and going for a run but not knowing what I'm doing to, almost 15 years later, honing in on subtleties of biomechanics and helping people fix a lot of joint alignments and become just more healthy in their musculoskeletal system, was from solving my own problems. Like the just stuff that a lot of people tell you just isn't good enough or doesn't apply to everybody. And if you're struggling with it, there are other ways, better ways in my opinion. And I'm just reflecting a lot on that being a pattern. And so we were talking earlier today about how that doesn't just apply to fitness. It's something that I think can be applied across the board if you look for that pattern.
Absolutely. And I think too that we've been talking a lot about the communities that we surround ourselves with and our attempts to kind of bring us into a beginner's mindset to validate how much we know about certain things that we just take for granted. And I think one thing that's related with the communities that feel like there must be another way to find an answer medically, physically, nutritionally, like I think of us as the people that we see as inspirational. They're the people who are like, oh, I'm at 40 something years old and I'm the fittest I've ever been, versus then that you have the demographic of people who are like, oh my God, I became 33 and my back hurts and I can't do anything anymore. And I just like that version of reality. I feel like even though we can, like that's why we do the work that we do, we're looking at human potential from like the older you get, the fitter you get.
Yep. Because in a sense, the wiser you get, and the smarter you get, and the more knowledge and wisdom you gain. And so as time goes on, you should be better at treating yourself better, just like you should be better at anything that you're doing for a longer amount of time. And so, yeah, that makes total sense. It's almost like by nature, the people who solve the problems for themselves are the people who are willing to put in the work, the consistent day after day, month after month, year after year of continuing to solve their own problems and then applying that to helping other people, rather than, again, for my example of fitness training and movement coaching, is like somebody who is just happily athletic their whole lives and then said, oh, well, I should train people for a living, or I would like to coach people for a living because I'm good at this and this is cool. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just think there's a next level of authenticity and quality from people who have had to go through the fire firsthand to develop their product.
Yeah, and I think, like what greater purpose do we have than being the best human that we can be? And if you look at masters of X, Y, and Z, like whatever it is, whatever talent or skill that you are honing, and it's 10,000 hours to reach mastery, why not reach 10,000 hours of mastery in like knowing how to move your body and being a more mobile, strong human. And like every day we have the opportunity to gather more information and to fine tune, and not to just become complacent and be like, well, I've always just been a runner, I'm just gonna run. I'm always been this way. Like, what if you could do something different and activate different muscle groups and surprise yourself?
Yeah, I love surprises, especially when they come in the form of less pain in your body.
That is a very nice surprise. And, you know, we were talking about how this can be applicable beyond fitness. So if we look at brands or leaders or just authentically inspiring people who are not striving to intentionally influence others for no other reason than just doing that, then like you have all the people who are solving their own problems, looking for creative solutions. And so for me, that really comes down to mental health. And so I will say also, whether it's with physical movement or what I'm about to say about mental health, we are not doctors or physicians or licensed therapists. So just, you can do what you want with the information, but we're not telling you what you should do or shouldn't do. So please keep that in mind. But with mental health, for me, I was diagnosed with depression when I was 14, and I was put on antidepressants instead of having a lifestyle change. And I really should have had a lifestyle change. You know, I was like this emo, goth, punky teenager staying up till like 4 a.m. on MySpace. Remember MySpace?
Who doesn't remember MySpace?
Your top 8 friends or whatever. Oh my gosh.
Tom. That was the guy, right?
Yep.
He was the founder and he was everyone's friend on MySpace,
Yep.
whether you wanted him or not.
Pre-Mark Zuckerberg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder where he is.
Mark Zuckerberg or Tom?
Tom.
I think we know where Mark Zuckerberg is. Yeah, hey, if you're listening, we're honored that you're listening.
Yes.
Hope you're doing well.
Thank you for adding to our teenage years in unhealthy ways.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it was
It was for the music.
yeah, and it was it was kind of a launching pad for the social media phenomenon that is now. Like, MySpace definitely played a role.
Yep.
Anyway,
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. But you were staying up till like 4 a.m. on MySpace?
Yeah. MySpace, Inner Pals, if anyone knows what Inner Pals is. It's like pen pals and stuff. I always loved having international pen pals. So I should have had like a lifestyle change. I should have been eating better. I should have been moving. I was playing volleyball in high school, and I was swimming. I think I joined the dive team at some point, but I was like such a loser because I was like, it was like all these blonde preppy girls. Like, I have now become the girl that teenager Savannah would have hated. Like, wearing yoga pants and blonde. Like, I had the cool skunk hair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with the teasing in the back and the eyeliner. It was great.
You're really painting us a picture.
All the clothes from Hot Topic.
Uh-huh.
Stripes, plaid skinny jeans. The Skell animals. I don't know if you remember them. Mm-hmm. They're stuffed animals. I had a penguin one, and I had slippers. And it was like, on the outside, it had like the skeleton of the penguin and like the heart.
Okay.
It was really cute. So, anyway, I was diagnosed with depression. Should have got a lifestyle change. When I was 17, I realized this. I don't know if I ever actually took the antidepressants as I was supposed to, because I was a teenager. I didn't do anything as I was supposed to. But when I was 17, I went to university, was living on my own, like with roommates and in California. And so just better lifestyle on like starting life as an adult. And that was when I got into CrossFit and paleo. And everything changed from there. And so since I was 17, I chose I lost trust in Western doctors for anything. And I was just like, I'm going to take care of myself. Like, my health is my responsibility. A doctor does not know my body better than I do. And they're not going to unless they're like hanging out with me all day. So that was my mental health. So I always have been devoted. I have over a decade of managing my mental health of depression and anxiety without medication. And I take supplements. I take rhodiola. It kind of is a brain tonic. The Russians were using it actually before steroids for their soldiers. It's also good for endurance and recovery. Really good for depression, not great for anxiety because it heightens things. And then just different things for that. And then the lifestyle, movement, mobility, mindfulness, and just really working on self-development every day. My morning coffee, like the naked routine, that helps with that. And yeah, so I've found a way I found the other way for myself. And I also have chosen to see my depression and anxiety as clues. Like for me, they come up when I'm out of alignment with my purpose and I'm not, like my thoughts, my actions, my beliefs are not aligned. Like when you are depressed, something at the core of your identity is often being repressed. And so usually, or most recently, what was happening was I wasn't really prioritizing my athletic identity. So I was a bit stuck there. So it's like coming at life first and foremost as an athlete, which I think all of us should as humans. That is what we are meant to do. And yeah, so I use it as an indicator of alignment. And if I get depressed or anxious about something, anxiety is great actually to prepare you for the future. And yeah, if I numbed those emotions, then I wouldn't have the awareness to make important changes in my life that would make me happier.
Yeah. So when it comes to coaching people, life coaching people, you had mentioned while there is a hard line between coaching and therapy, that should not be crossed as a coach. We should not be recklessly engaging in practices that are outside of our scope of practice.
Yes.
But at the same time, there is a difference between a life coach who has battled mental illness and a life coach who has not. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. Like something that has always stuck with me is when people are like, they look down at therapy and they're like, oh my God, but therapists are the most fucked up people. It's like, yeah, great. I want a fucked up person to be helping me with my fucked upness. Mm-hmm. I don't want like this perfectly curated human who's always had everything they ever needed to be trying to understand me and meet me where I'm at, because they're not going to be able to get there and put themselves in my shoes. And I've seen this with life coaching. So like with the ICF guidelines, it's very clear that you need to have a distinct line between coaching and therapy. You don't cross over into therapy, and if you find that your client needs a therapist, then you refer them out. But what I have found is that because I have my own experience with my mental health challenges, I'm able to really be more supportive with clients who either have been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, or other things like this. So I can understand like how their nervous system works differently and how they're navigating the world in a different way. Because especially when you go into very masculine dominant coaching programs, there's an idea of like, just do this, just do that, follow the structure. A, B, C gets you to Z. And it's like, do hard things all the time. Whereas, and I've seen this with people when they are coaching people, like they can't meet them where they're at if they don't have that experience of mental health challenges, which there are great coaches who don't have those experiences and can put themselves in those shoes or can understand it at least. But there's also those who they don't even know how to meet their client or to to meet a compromise and to kind of shift things around outside of what the programming says to do. So yeah, so I feel like I can kind of, it's a little bit easier for me to kind of understand, like, how much do I push versus support, and where is it going to push them too far into something that brings on the anxiety, brings on the depression, or whatever else, and understanding how that current mind state is going to limit what they're able to do within that container of time, whether it's a week or a month.
Yes, this is where coaching in general, whatever kind of coaching, becomes an art, or it's when we can see the art of coaching and not just the science of coaching. Because most coaches of any type, training, health coaching, life coaching, whatever company you're training with or you're doing a certification with or whatever, they kind of have their prescription, which you could consider the science of coaching, right? It's like, first you start with this, then you start with that. And that can be really helpful, but I think we always want to treat that as a roadmap, as a loosely drawn roadmap, instead of the step-by-step instruction manual that must be followed. And there's a podcast I listen to where there's actually a chiropractor who is also one of these guys who's just into biomechanics and movement like I am, and is kind of, he went through all the chiropractic training. He's a doctor of chiropractic medicine. He practices, but what sets him apart from other chiropractors is he's also bringing this lens of, there's other stuff that works as well. And I need to treat each patient as an individual who may or may not need something extra or something a little bit different. And that, to me, is what separates a really good practitioner of something that's of service to others from somebody who's just textbook. And sometimes I often think, like, if I had just done my certifications and just followed the exact prescription that was in there, maybe, I don't know, maybe I would have more clients, or maybe I would be like grinding less mentally too on how to get through to certain clients or whatever it is. Like, there would just be less gray area. There'd be less struggle in kind of perfecting my practice. But that just would not be satisfying, because number one, half of it is just wrong. Half of any mainstream personal training course is just wrong. And number two, even if it's right, the approach is just so cookie cutter. You can't, like, what do you do when you run into somebody for whom that doesn't work, or for whom it's more difficult to arrive on that avenue? Like, you can get them to the same point, but you can have them try another way to get there. And one of the best ways to do that is to have gone that alternate route yourself, because you had no other choice.
Yeah. And then to really set the standards, because also if you're following those cookie cutter methods, what makes you stand out? Exactly. Like, if you're gonna put effort into doing something and making the world a better place, do it the best way that you possibly can and make it yours.
Yeah. And again, that's what, like, you don't have to be, I used to think that all of my interests, if I go back to being a bit of a younger man, and I'm like, I love music and movement and fitness and languages and psychology, and it's just like, you're thinking like, oh, I have to pick one of these career paths and do that, or that I need to, if I want to do something with those and make those interests and talents worthwhile, that I have to like become formally educated in all of those things. And instead, what sets the best people apart from the mediocre people is that they also have a broad range of interests, and they bring interest and talent and expertise from other areas into their kind of main field of professional practice, but they don't necessarily have to advertise that. Like, they're not like, I'm a trainer who also, incorporates languages and music and therapy, like mental health interest into my training. It's just more the ones who would say, okay, I'm training you. I noticed that we're working on breathing mechanics, which are important for pretty much anything physical. But, to be the person who says, do you have anxiety? Because I'm noticing that your resting breath is very shallow and very fast. And you can kind of link the talk about anxiety to the physical problems that they're trying to solve, and instantly you make a connection that they never would have made. And I don't have to be a licensed mental health therapist to do that. I have to be a qualified trainer who is also very interested in the link between mental health and physical health, and to help somebody recognize the feedback loop between their anxiety, as an example, and their sort of baseline breathing pattern. It can be huge for them. So those are the people that I seek out, are the people who are lifelong students of a bunch of other things that are kind of related, and they use that along the way, and also, highly qualified in whatever their main thing is.
Expanding on the anxiety example too, it's just so helpful. There are so many people in the world who aren't aware of what the emotions are that they're actually feeling, and so for someone to suggest putting a name to it, it has the power to pull that emotion a little bit outside of their identity. So it's not like they're just consumed by it, and to give it a name and be like, oh, that's what I'm feeling. And I felt this when I felt certain kinds of stress. And when I break down that stress into like a more fine-tuned feeling, it's like, oh, I'm afraid of this or something. Then it's like, it's almost like a sigh of relief. And so if you can name that, then that can really support someone's growth. And also related to the anxiety, it's like, are you having anxiety, or are you feeling anxiety? Because I think also this is a bigger discussion, but there's such an overdiagnosis of mental health, and it's like, you don't have to be sick in order to feel anxiety sometimes, or to feel really sad and really low. Like, you can experience these feelings without putting like a limiting lifelong label on it as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. And it's relevant because people are not always quick enough to tell themselves or to admit to themselves that they're feeling anxiety at the moment, because they conflate feeling anxiety with having clinical anxiety or being dysfunctionally an anxious person. So where the word anxiety becomes taboo for some people, and it's just like, well, they'll use other words like just maybe stressed, or maybe just a little off or whatever. But to be able to say I'm feeling anxiety right now, and for that to clearly not mean that you're a clinically anxious person, will still, I agree with you, is helpful to pull you out of it and to detach it from your sense of self in that moment. And then you can start to move past it.
Yeah, and then it supports you to step into a stronger place of personal responsibility and taking responsibility for the emotions and how you are expressing the emotions to impact the people around you. Because also, if you're just going to kind of take on this blanket labeling as a diagnosis, and it's not necessarily true, then it's easy to just place blame on it. And to take away responsibility, it's like, well, that's just the way I am. I have this problem, rather than if you see it as this temporary feeling, because you're a human and we're all humans, and we have the challenges, we have lows, we have highs, we make mistakes, we're all so different. But society wants us to fit into this like middle ground of like average emotions, whatever. And then it's just easy to understand, and it's easier to understand people, or think we understand people, by labeling as like neurotic and whatever else. So if we actually see these as temporary emotions that we're feeling and we're processing, and we let go and we're learning through them, then we take responsibility for that, and we can then show up better in our own lives, and we can be better friends and partners and family members to the people around us.
And that will go for your physical health as well. Just keeping with the drawing connections between the physical and mental. Like, you are not your back pain. You are not your whatever injury you had. Like, we like to, like you said about the 33-year-old who's like, oh, once you get into your 30s, you just get back pain all of a sudden. And to identify with that as like, well, I just can't do stuff movement-wise anymore because I have back pain, or I'm someone with back pain. Like, no, your back pain is temporary and is caused, unless you have a clear injury, is caused by dysfunctional mechanics in your everyday life. So treat it as something temporary, and treat it as something that you yourself can take control of and work to correct, and then you can show up better for yourself and for the people in your life. And that could mean, both, because we're all, we're in a better mood when we're not in physical discomfort, and we're agitated, we're short, we're not present when we're physically chronically uncomfortable. And so you will be, like, if you address pain or restriction or just a lack of feeling at home in your body, if you choose to address that and commit to that, you will be better behaviorally. You will be better in your relationships, and you will just be better mentally too. And if you correct the mental stuff, meaning if you address your temporary anxiety and you take control of it, and you establish a protocol for yourself to work through it, then you will also feel better physically, likely. There are always, there are more complicated cases, and like Savannah said, we're not doctors, we're not therapists, but in general, from the coach's perspective, they are so linked that one will almost always influence the other, and that goes for positively or negatively. So pick one and then start to bring it positive and just see what happens. Yep.
It's the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't really matter which one you choose.
For sure. I think it's going to be different from everybody, for everybody, right? So whatever's more accessible to you, if you feel like it's the mind or the body, start somewhere and watch them both transform. Hopefully for the better. Hopefully that's the choice we're all making. So
I think we've covered a lot.
I think so too. So, well, thank you all again for tuning in to this episode, our first episode together.
A very special episode.
While we don't want anything, we talked earlier, we don't want anything to be framed as the once-in-a-lifetime thing that we absolutely have to take advantage of. It will probably be a while until we have an episode like this again. So if you liked this episode, please let us know in comments or reach out to us on social media. You can find me at moves_with_Coombs. That's my last name. And where can they find you?
At Primal Revolutions with an S altogether.
And so if you liked this one, please just let us know. Let us know what you'd like us to elaborate more on. Let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover. Any feedback is helpful and also just enjoyable for us to hear from our audience and interact with this community.
Thank you so much again for tuning in with both of us live in Morocco. So we will look forward to our next conversation from somewhere else in the world. So until next time, have an amazing week. navigating the world from your primal purpose.